Hey.
It's really great to see you again. I'm very happy you had some time to speak today, and I'm not sure how formal this lane is framed up, so I don't know if you want to go ahead and get started or.
Yeah, well, I apologize in advance that my son may wake up again, and then I'll have to talk to my husband to take care of him. So it won't hurt the debate. Okay, so do you want to start? Because for me, it's very easy to say why it's very obvious for the American president to acknowledge the Jerusalem being the capital of Israel. So I guess for you, it's a bit more complicated.
Well, like I said, I'm not sure how formal we should frame this one up. Uh, what I'd like to know is why you think it's a good idea at this time without a peace agreement being reached, because it's caused a lot of violence on both sides already, and the international community obviously isn't in agreement. So how is that good for Israel, the United States, or anyone? And of course, I know we both probably been following the violence, and I know that we both don't like that. 2 people are dead and wounded. The bombs are dropping, etc. But what's the lasting impact?
What can I ask you a question? Since when have we been shaping our policies based on the violence and going to provoke? I mean, does it matter if we're doing the right thing or not the right thing based on how much violence we're going to receive in a response? Is that the right way to shape our policies?
Well, I think the policies should be shaped around peace. It's not really the cause, it's the outcome. And I'll get to that.
Okay, so what I'm saying in this case, I have a couple of comments. Okay, first of all, President Trump made he actually fulfilled 2 of his promises before the elections and after the elections. The one that he said that he's going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem because it's very obvious everywhere in the world. The embassies of foreign countries are based in the capital of the state, okay, of the country that it is located in. And the second promise he made was that he's going to stop interfering. I mean, America is going to stop interfering in internal affairs of the countries. Okay, and when he said that, I respected him a lot, okay, for saying that, because America has been interfering in internal affairs of some countries in some sort of a not politically correct way, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's what he fulfilled. So he fulfilled 2 of his promises, and first of all, thank Donald Trump for that. Second of all, for me, it's very obvious. I mean, what he acknowledged in that speech was acknowledging the obvious. Jerusalem is the state of Israel. It doesn't matter how you look at it. It doesn't matter what you're gonna try to make out of it. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It's going to be the capital of Israel. It doesn't matter when. If Palestinian state exists or doesn't exist, if there will be peace agreement or not peace agreement, that is the obvious. It's not going to change. So forcing on Israel, not acknowledging Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, is forcing it into a weaker position in any negotiations that will come in the future. That is not okay.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish. I really hope that I don't have to go over. This doesn't become the talk about history. I'm ready to talk about the history.
No, not at all.
I'm just going to keep moving forward to where I was at. And I mean, I of course, this is to hear your side, so I appreciate hearing your side. Today, when I woke up, I saw that the Arab League, that they are going to pressure the Security Council into voting against both our countries, both the United States and Israel. So there's some harm to the international community. And it's my understanding that the Arab League, they actually really want to make peace with Israel. They recognize Israel. Their only problem is these holy sites in Jerusalem, actually. That's even Iran, that's their only real problem with recognizing Israel is Jerusalem and the holy sites there.
Which holy sites?
both the Christian and Muslim ones.
What
So
is
of
their
course
problem?
Al-Aswa, and then
I'm
there's
sorry,
like
I just didn't understand the point that you were mentioning. You said that the problem is the Arab League to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is because of the holy sites of Islam and Christianity in Jerusalem.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they would recognize your state. That this is the problem. I'm going to move into why it's a problem to a peace solution, and that's actually my next statement. But I also saw, of course, Jordan controls those sites. They've actually also been talking to the Security Council, and they're
By the
because
way, their
they've
annexation
been working
of
with you.
Jerusalem also was illegal.
Did
Yeah,
you?
it just,
I'm sorry.
their Jordan's annexation of Jerusalem was also illegal, right? You remember that, I hope.
Well, I'm not talking about 50 years ago. I'm talking about this week.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just mentioning the fact that they're
It's the
controlling.
outcome anyway. It's not the cause. We're arguing about an outcome, not a cause today.
Okay, well, what is the outcome that you think is going to happen?
Well, I'll get to the problem, and then you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So Jordan, they're also talking to the Security Council. They're saying that they might not be your ally anymore over this, and that's a real problem because what is Jerusalem? It's a holy city to three religions, not just, of course, Judaism and
First of all and
Islam,
above
but
all, it
also
was first
Christianity. And they
Jerusalem.
all believe in the Old
Holy for
Testament.
Jerusalem. What?
I'm just trying to get through this. I'll let you rebut here in just a second. I'm just trying to get through this. So
Okay.
it's holy to the three major religions, which includes Christians. It's not just Muslims. It's not just Judaism. It includes Christians.
Right.
And actually, I don't have a problem. A two-state solution, assuming that it's a two-state solution, and I don't really have a problem with the western half of Jerusalem being the capital of Israel at all. If that's a two-state solution, if that's what it's going to take to solve this, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
But the other thing is as I mentioned, this kind of hinders a negotiated one-state solution, because for there to be a one-state solution that's viable, that's negotiated, it would have to include these holy sites the way that they are now, and that seems to be the problem.
Which holy sites?
Well, mostly Al-Aqsa, the mosque, that also happens to be the wall. So
the wall, you mean the Western Wall that is sacred to Jews? Okay, so what is the problem with the present situation when the Waqf controls the Temple Mount, and that's it? I mean, that's the only place that is actually sacred to the Muslims. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock is the only place that is sacred to the Muslims in Jerusalem. Everywhere else is either sacred for the Christians or for the Jews. And by the way, the Jewish control over the city is the only one that actually keeps the sites free and the freedom. I mean, the freedom of religion there, because Muslims wouldn't respect that way the Jewish sites as we are respecting their sites.
Okay, what was the reason for the second Intifada in 2000?
Because Ariel Sharon got on the Temple Mount, the most sacred place for the Jewish people on earth, that is the Temple Mount, and they were offended. Okay, they were offended by the fact that he got up there. That is the only place that the Jews aren't allowed to pray. If I go there on the Temple Mount and I try to pray for my God on the most sacred place on earth for me as a Jew, I won't be allowed. I will be arrested, because there is a status quo with the Waqf saying that the Jews aren't allowed. Where would you hear about that sort of a outrageous law that doesn't allow some people of some religion pray on their most sacred site on earth?
You know, I don't have a problem with that. That's really not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that
you asked
why. You're actually helping me illustrate that this site is contested, and it's not so much that you can't pray there. I would hope in a negotiated one-state solution you could pray there. It makes perfect sense to me that you could do that.
One-state solution? I'm sorry, whose state?
Well, it's negotiated.
Yeah, I know.
So you would both have to live together.
Solution. When you talk about one state solution, which state are you talking about? Are you talking about Israel, or are you talking about Palestine?
I don't believe that it should be. I don't believe in ethnic states.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't. I mean, I don't think that one ethnicity should be dominant in any state,
Well,
anywhere.
at the point at now at this time, it's a Jewish state, so just keep it this way, and it's not going to change. But whatever.
Okay. Well, let me get to what the problem is. Okay, and this is the real problem here, is that when Bill Clinton did this, when this happened in 1995, it was part of the Oslo Peace Accords. It could be argued that it was actually to make sure that there was an inequality of outcome or an equality of outcome. The outcome would be predetermined that Jerusalem would be an undivided capital to stop the talks or to make sure that that was a condition of the talks, however you look at it. And the thing is that those talks fell apart. So it was a goal that wasn't achieved. And to illustrate that further, this was supposed to happen before I even graduated high school. This was supposed to happen on May 31st, 1999 was the deadline. And the reason that it's been postponed since then is because of security reasons. And if anything, the events of the past 2 days, both the violence and the condemnation in the international community, show that there are real reasons to be concerned about this.
Okay. So what are the reasons?
Well, like I said, Jordan has approached the Security Council saying that they don't want to be allies anymore and that they are controlling these holy sites. So it causes tension within the city. And of course, there's violence going on over there right now. 4 people are dead, many more are wounded. And then you also have them saying that they want to make peace, but now they don't know. They're not so sure about that. The whole Arab League has been banding together to make peace, and now they're not so sure. They want to vote against both of us, so we both lose.
So I have a question for you. So if now Al Qaeda or ISIS came to Donald Trump and said, "I want a part of Washington D.C. Otherwise, I'm going to kill a lot of people," would that be legitimate for you to give up part of your capital for that reason?
Well, okay, so I guess we are going to have to go over all the history. It's an unfair analogy because you're assuming that Jerusalem is supposed to be the capital of Israel anyway, which it isn't. If you go back to the 47 partition plan, it's not supposed to be the capital. You go back to the partition plan. Jerusalem is not. Is Jerusalem part of the partition plan, or is it an international city in a 2-state solution of?
Well, it's first of all, let's talk about history. Okay, Jerusalem is the only city that we ever considered our capital. So if there was a partition plan saying that there is a half the west side is Jewish state, and the east side is Jewish. It's the Arab state. Yeah. So with the west side.
Well, that was 70 years ago, and as I've said, I really don't have a problem with the western half.
Okay.
Being part of being your capital, because
I just want to remind you that the partition plan wasn't accepted by the Arabs, so it doesn't really matter what it included or it didn't. They didn't accept it. So what was supposed they're part of Jerusalem, they didn't accept the partition plan.
Well, I mean, why they lost? The outcome is that they lost in 48, and then the outcome, if you want to jump ahead to 67, is they lost again because they lost the eastern half, which would be their community anyway. So now their community's under control.
Accepted the partition plan back then in 1948, but they didn't, and they gambled on the wrong side, and they lost. Okay,
this isn't a debate over history and what the cause was. We're just talking about the outcome.
Well, okay, but you can change the outcome if you chose the wrong decision. If you decide,
I'm talking about the outcome of now. I'm talking about the outcome of Donald Trump's decision and Bill Clinton's decision. I'm not talking about who started what war and when. I'm just talking about the outcome of that war and what it was supposed to be anyway. Because
which war?
That was the only 2 that I think really are relevant here without this becoming a history debate that's boring and will go nowhere anyway.
And 67. I'm not talking about history. I just really can't understand the whole topic of this debate. You are saying the U.S. should not move its embassy to Jerusalem. Well, Jerusalem is Israel's capital. It doesn't matter if there is going to be a Palestinian state anytime soon or anytime in the future, okay? It doesn't matter. The fact when Israel exists, the only city that is and is going to be the capital of Israel is Jerusalem. So if you if you accept the Israel's existence, okay, so you should accept that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. So if it's Israel's capital, then all the embassies of all the countries in the world should be in the capital. So what is the question?
I asked you why. The first thing I asked you is why do this now without a peace plan? And I said, and I've explained the history, and I've given some reasonings for your other questions already.
I really don't understand. You're saying that if it's a good time to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're asking?
Why do it now?
Why not? Why not do it 70 years ago?
Because it was supposed to be a part of a peace plan, and there's no peace plan.
The peace plan, the partition plan wasn't accepted by the Arabs. So what should we do? Wait for them to accept the partition plan, or lose in a war to make them the Jerusalem their capital?
I'm talking about the Oslo Accords. I'm not talking about
their capital.
Partition plan,
wait a second. Their capital is in Ramallah. It has never been in Jerusalem, and it will never be in Jerusalem anymore.
Isn't that one of the reasons why that they wouldn't sign the agreement, though? I mean, especially since that the eastern half would be theirs anyway.
Excuse me, what?
Don't you think that the eastern half of Jerusalem and the fact that the Bill Clinton's peace talks, it wasn't actually in Jerusalem, it was in Ramallah? Don't you see that? Isn't that the reason that they didn't sign that plan?
No, they didn't sign that plan because they don't want a plan. They don't want any peace agreement. They've been offered 3 times all kinds of peace agreements. 98% of the West Bank, they've been offered everything and they declined, and they refused any peace talks. And we are still waiting for them to respond to the last offer by Ehud Olmert in 2006. They haven't replied yet. And now they're just looking for another excuse to not start the peace talks. So I don't care what the reason is. I'm just asking you. I just want you to go back again to the question. U.S. should not move its embassy to Jerusalem. I'm asking you why. You're saying because of the outcome, and why doing this now? So what I'm asking you, why not? You're saying there's going to be violence. So I'm asking you, okay, why should we shape our policies based on someone else's violence? Is that okay? And is that the way we should shape our policies? If Jerusalem is Israel's capital, like everywhere else, we accept the fact that Paris is France's capital. We accept that Washington, D.C. is the United States capital. We place our embassy in Washington, D.C. and Paris. So why shouldn't you do that in Jerusalem? It doesn't matter what is going to happen later. I'm saying that Jerusalem is Israel's capital and is going to be that way. Doesn't matter what happens later. So why not? And why not 70 years ago?
What's worthwhile about that? Am I supposed to believe that you would sign a peace deal that didn't make Jerusalem your capital?
Excuse me, what's worthwhile about it? Why are you going to visit your grandma that lives way, way far away, and not some old lady that lives right beside you? Excuse me, Jerusalem is the only city we ever considered our capital. By the way, Jerusalem has always, it's capital of only one nation. It has never been Palestinians' capital. It has never been the capital of the Ottoman Empire. It has never been the capital of a mandate on Palestine because it wasn't a state, right? Just like Palestinians use, it has never been a sovereign state. There has never been a state called Palestine. Okay, it has never been a capital of the Mamluks. It has never been the capital of the Roman Empire. It has always been and was only Jewish capital. Jerusalem was only the capital of the Jewish people, not any other rule of any other empire that has ever come to this region and conquered it. So why not? What's worthwhile about it? Well,
what's worthwhile about it now?
It's
in
our
the here and
capital.
now. We influence the here and now. What's worthwhile about it now?
In moving embassy or considering Jerusalem as our capital.
Both. I mean, moving the embassy.
I don't know.
I don't care if you can if you consider Jerusalem your capital. Like my only going back to 47, I'm just pointing out that it's not supposed to be your capital. But I've already said it's 70 years
It is
later. If you want
our
the western half to
capital,
be your
and it has
capital, like
always been, and it will always will be. And any other city would just not be capital of the Jewish state
it's
because
not legally recognized that way, and it still isn't today.
I
Really,
don't.
I think most
I'm
people
sorry.
would contend that wouldn't really have a problem with the western half, but it's really the eastern half that we're disputing.
Well, I don't know. The Arabs didn't accept the partition plan. Well, they started a war, they lost it. They started another war, they lost it. So I just don't understand your. I mean, Jerusalem, even if it wasn't part of the partition plan, it's irrelevant because it wasn't accepted by the Arabs. Okay, and it doesn't make any value of Jerusalem of if it's a capital or not. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Okay, so Jerusalem has always been and will always remain the capital of the Jewish state. Okay, either it's if it's a united Jerusalem or just the west part of it. Okay, to be honest with you, I don't see in any soon. I mean, I can't see us giving away the eastern part of Jerusalem, including all our holy sites, because all of our holy sites for the Jewish people are located in eastern Jerusalem, as you call it. Okay, so for us, we're not going to give it away. That's why we gave the right for the Arabs living there, right to get a citizenship. They are how do you call it? They're not citizens yet, but they can claim citizenship, and they're receiving their social security and social how do you call it? Subsidies. I don't know. I don't remember the word, but yeah, they're. I mean, they can claim citizenship because we annexed it, and we're going to keep it, just like the Ramat the Golan Heights, because we're
So
not going
these are all
to give
good
it away.
reasons that the United Nations would think that Jerusalem should be an international city.
Why would we do that? It's our city. It's our capital. Why should we give it away just because some freaks are going to threaten somebody to kill somebody? Is it? I mean, does it sound logical to you?
If we were talking about the wall, would you think it's fair to describe it that way?
The wall?
Hmm.
Which wall?
The one in the old city.
The Western Wall?
Hmm.
It's not the holy site for Jews. The only reason we are praying there is this. That's the far we can go to pray, the closest to the holy the mount the Temple Mount, the most sacred place for Judaism on
Is it fair
earth.
to talk about the Temple Mount that way?
What?
Is it fair to talk about the Temple Mount that way?
That's the most holiest place on earth for the Jews.
I don't think it's fair. So why should we talk about other people wanting to go to their holy site that way? I think, which includes Christians, it's not just Muslims, because you all believe in Abraham and you all believe in the Old Testament
They
anyway.
can go there, they can pray there. Not on the contrary, when there was the Temple Mount, 70. I mean, all the nations would come how do you call it? Um, to pray for their gods on the Temple Mount. That's part of our history. We let everybody pray in our holy sites. If the Muslims came to the Western Wall now, nobody would tell them to go away, just like Donald Trump came to the Western Wall and prayed there, because we let other religions come to our holy sites. Unlike the Arabs, they won't let me pray on the Temple Mount,
Hmm.
the holiest place for me. That's ridiculous.
Hmm. Let me ask you this, and I might be totally wrong about this. It's my understanding the Torah actually explains what happened with the Romans in Jerusalem and says it's a bad idea to to go back or to seek a state there because there's always been a Jewish population in the city, and that's more than fine. But the Torah says just not to go there and seek a state.
No, the Torah doesn't say that. Torah says that in the end of the world, in the end of the days, the Jews will return to their land and establish the state. I can tell you, you can go to Ezekiel 37 21. Look at it now.
But am I to believe that the world is going to end?
No, that's what our religion says. It doesn't matter what you think about it. I'm just telling you, Jerusalem is the only place that we ever considered our holiest, the most important city on earth. If there was a Jewish state, Jerusalem is the only city that we can consider and will ever consider our capital. Anything else wouldn't be accepted.
It can't be. You can't have your capital in the western half as part of a two-state solution at this point.
That can be negotiated, but it doesn't make the fact that Jerusalem is our capital any less important.
Isn't that the idea of these talks that failed, even though it says that the other side, that their half is their capital is actually in a suburb? Isn't that the idea, though, that's being passed along, that you both had a joint capital as part of this two-state solution that fell through? And then that was the whole idea of this legislation from 1995 to begin with, is that just to make sure as a precondition of the talks that
why should there be any preconditions? Every time there are some different preconditions for Mahmoud Abbas to stop the negotiations and not to go to the peace talks. Sometimes it's just the keeping of building cities in the West Bank, okay, not building in new places, but building in the places that do already exist. So that was a precondition that stopped him from going to the peace talks. Then now it's Jerusalem. He's just looking for excuses to not go to peace talks. I can't decide for him.
Would you want to go to a peace talk if it didn't include the old city?
What?
How excited would you be about a peace talk if it didn't include the old city?
If it didn't include, it doesn't include, it will never include the old city.
So you probably wouldn't be very excited then.
Excited what? That it won't include the old city? You mean the East Jerusalem?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. That's not what you want, right? So why? Yeah. Sure, why even bother? Type thing. Like, that's not what I'm negotiating for.
Yeah, like, we're not negotiating over Jerusalem, and I don't see a reason to negotiate over.
Wouldn't Abbas and wouldn't going back to 1999? Wouldn't Arafat feel the same way?
I don't care what Arafat felt. He wasn't Palestinian anyway. He was born in Tunisia.
But he was a negotiator. He was the person negotiating with Bill Clinton.
He signed a piece of paper that called Oslo agreements and didn't bother to keep one word of his. He was the biggest terrorist of the Palestinian people. He wasn't a leader, and I don't care why he didn't start the negotiation.
It's not the cause; it's the outcome, though.
It doesn't matter.
I'm saying that because the talks fell apart, that's the reason that this is a bad idea, because it's supposed to be part of the talks that didn't work. I'm saying that we can't do this now. I'm not saying that you can't have your capital there.
I will ask you.
I live in America. This kind of goes back to one of your other points. I know we talked about this before. I live in America, so other than the fact that I'm the person funding this, honestly, I don't really see why I would tell you where your capital is supposed to be anyway. Okay, but the thing is that because of international law and the fact that I'm funding it, and the example being that now these states are going to vote against us at the Security Council, and these states have done things as a reaction that harmed America. Like, for instance, the gasoline and oil crisis in the 70s was because of this conflict. So there's real implications.
What did you just say?
Saudi Arabia cut our oil off in the 70s.
Because of the conflict?
Yes.
They're just saying it. Look, the conflict in Israel is a very local, regional conflict between a sovereign state and a bunch of people that want to claim sovereignty, which is fine, okay, but they claim it with violence and do not negotiate, that would be unacceptable in any other place on earth except Israel. Now, a very local, very regional conflict became like some sort of a conflict that everybody has say about. Well, it doesn't affect you whatsoever in any way.
Actually, I've heard this argued that it could be a negative for your side because the Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinians are, of course, they're divided between the West Bank and Gaza. That those two because they actually kind of have two governments and they're trying to form a unity government right now. So it's my understanding that as far as negotiations go, and the fact that they don't really have a unified government and that makes negotiations difficult, that they're actually more likely to band together, probably with an organization like the Arab League, and insist that something be done right away. I think actually their ambassador, he made a pretty interesting statement just on Friday, saying that they did exactly that the Palestinian ambassador, that we need to do something right away about this because of the holy sites. Because it's going to be, I think his words are never-ending holy violence and warfare as a result, and we already are seeing that. And I don't want people to be violent. That's not the idea. The idea
Tell
is I'm
them
saying
that
that
it's
there should be a
unacceptable.
peace plan first.
We do want peace, okay? The fact that somebody actually declare the obvious, okay, doesn't prevent the Palestinians from going to peace talks. The fact that Donald Trump declared Jerusalem as the state of Israel, he actually said he didn't change anything, because Jerusalem used to be the capital of Israel and will remain. He didn't change anything. The only thing that he did change is that he showed his support to the Israeli side in this conflict, saying that he's not going to interfere, okay, in the internal affairs of a sovereign state in a far, far away from his country, okay? And being his ally, he said, okay, I'm going to support the country that I share values with, okay, but I will let them to go to peace talks and negotiate over some things. Saying that that actually not admitting that Jerusalem is Israel's capital is actually weakening Israel's position in any negotiations that will come in the future. Okay, and that is not okay, because you're pushing Israel to a corner, saying, okay, Palestinians can't. Wait a second. Palestinians can't force something on Israel, so we will force this on her anyway. Okay, so why should there be any preconditions for any peace talks? And I'm asking you a question. If Israel doesn't give up Jerusalem, and I don't see it happen, because Jerusalem is way, way more important to us than any other thing, and even more important to us than the state of Israel, okay? Because Jerusalem is the only thing that we actually value on this land, okay? That is the most important thing for us. That is the most important location for us. That is the most important everything for us. Okay, for me personally, and for my people through the years and through the ages and everything. So we won't give up Jerusalem in any way. Should the Palestinians stop and not go to any peace talks in the future with us? Would that be legitimate?
I'm not saying that the Palestinians shouldn't go to peace talks with you. That's what I'm saying is, I'm just going to go back to your contention. Every president, Obama, Clinton, George Herbert Walker, they all George Walker. Not, I don't know about George Herbert Walker. That'll be a comparison here in a second. They've all recognized it. Barack Obama even said in an undivided Jerusalem will be the capital. So they recognize it. They just didn't implement it because of security concerns, and because there was a goal, a peace plan. It was supposed to be part of a peace plan. So there was a goal that hadn't been met. So they had a good reason to not actually go forward with it, to continue postponing it. So they all recognized it. So your problem that he recognized it. It's not that he didn't recognize it, or someone doesn't recognize it, or that I don't recognize it. I'm sure that there's plenty of people in the audience who are willing to concede the western half. I know I think people recognize it. It's just the implementation. It's just the implementation aspect, because that's a security concern. Because as I've illustrated, our allies, both Jordan, who's an ally of both Israel and the United States, who controls these holy sites that are Christian and Muslim, that they are not interested in being our ally anymore, and the Arab League will not vote with us at the Security Council anymore.
And
the violence that's on the ground, that's a concern, but it's not my chief concern, because I don't think that there's a long-term impact. I mean, there could be a lot of violence as a long-term impact, but but that specifically isn't the impact that I'm concerned about here. And the thing is that you keep saying that they won't talk to us, and I keep saying that they have this same thing that they just cannot let go of, and that's this holy city that you have. So you both have the same problem, and it's
first of all, Jerusalem has never been their capital. Okay, even if they consider it as holy, they actually place their their government in Ramallah. Okay, so Jerusalem has never been that important to them. It became important when it just became Israel's. Okay, it has never been important.
They seem to think that the problem with Bill Clinton's plan was that it was in Ramallah.
Wait a second. When Jordan ruled Jerusalem, when Jordan was controlling the West Bank, did they move their capital from Amman to Jerusalem? No. Because Jerusalem was just a place. It has never been that important to them. So what I'm saying is, if not declaring that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel didn't change anything during the years since 1995, nothing changed. There wasn't any peace agreements, even without declaring the obvious. So now why would that change anything if we declare the obvious? Why should we play this game, not accepting Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, not declaring the obvious for some reasons of people who may be violent? I mean, since when is that important, and since when should this shape our policies? I mean,
I don't think that they're worried about the Western half.
Wait a second. It's not about the right and the wrong. It's about just what is just and what is unjust. There is a sovereign state that has decided that Jerusalem is the capital of hers. Okay, it is our capital. How rude is that of any other country around the world, which is supposed to respect its sovereignty, okay, her sovereignty of Israel, not accept the fact that we decide that Jerusalem is our capital for some stupid reasons that some people may be violent. That is rude.
Is Palestine, is their state not a sovereign state as well?
Excuse me?
Is the other side of this, the Palestinians, is their state, is that a sovereign state?
No, they're not. They're not sovereign state. When did they establish a sovereign state? They're still using
one. It says in 1947 in the partition plan.
Well,
they have a recognized state at the UN.
Well, they didn't accept it. They should have accepted it. Well, they're bad. They started a war which they lost.
Is it really an issue if they?
It's like saying in poker, I'm all in. And then what do you have, like 3 aces, 4 aces? And I'm not all in, right?
But the United States and the UN view it that way, because that's what's in our interest, right?
Well, they offered something, okay? They offered to the Jews and the Arabs a partition plan, which Jews accepted. The Arabs didn't accept it. They started a war, which they lost. So what right do they have to actually to accept the partition plan that they didn't accept from the first place? Now they don't have the right to, because Israel is a sovereign state, and they are still not. And Israel is the one that will decide the conditions or preconditions to any peace agreements that will come. Israel has the army. Israel has the sovereignty. Israel is ruling over some territories that they lost. Okay, so what do they have to decide? They have, if they want a sovereign state, no problem. Come here, talk to us, let's negotiate. Right?
It would be better if you negotiated over the status quo, but as of now, what would happen if Donald Trump had done nothing, if he had done the same thing as Obama and George W. and Clinton? What if he had done the same thing and recognized it but not gone through with it? What if we had done nothing? How would that look today?
That would be just the same as it looked with Bill Clinton and George W. Bush.
Would there
Which
be violence? Would people
nothing
be voting
changed.
against this at the UN?
Excuse me?
Would there be a negative impact of violence and repercussions at the
I don't
UN?
care. I don't care. Jerusalem is the state, it's the capital of the state of Israel. That is a fact. Playing the game that it is not, it's not the capital of Israel because we are not wanting to provoke, and by that way actually not respecting Israel and its sovereignty. Okay, that is not okay. That's sort of humiliating Israel.
They're
By
willing to concede this the second half is a bottom line approach to negotiations, that you would split it in half and that you'd each get to have your capital there and that the holy sites will remain the same.
I didn't understand your question.
It's a statement, not a question. I'm saying in response that in this peace plan that this legislation is part of, the idea of it is that it would have split Jerusalem in half and that they would have conceded the western half as your capital, and that they would have held on to the eastern half was what they wanted. They wanted the eastern half of it, and the holy sites would remain the same. The old city would remain the same.
Yes, I'm sorry. The fact that Jerusalem isn't recognized by all the nations around the world as the Jewish capital, as the capital of Israel, is first of all, it's unjust. Okay, it's very rude to not accept the fact that some sovereign country decided upon a city that it will be a capital of the country, right? And trying to force something on a sovereign state and weaken its position in any negotiations that will come with the other party, it's very rude. Okay, I just don't know the right word for that kind of thing. It's just unacceptable. Okay, so any sort of options that you're offering just in order not to provoke the Palestinian tantrum, okay, that is just unjust for me. I mean, that wouldn't go through in any other country. Why?
It's not just to provoke the Palestinians. It's all the Arab states that are Muslim, the ones that have resources
to do or not
have other interests in.
Let
me put it this way. You talk about like let me phrase it.
I don't care. Wait a second. I'm asking you a question. Even if it does provoke all the Arabs in the world, does that okay to humiliate a sovereign state just in order not to provoke some barbarian people?
I believe the Palestinians are sovereign too.
They're not. They're not yet. If they want to sovereign, if they were sovereign, there wouldn't be any sort of peace agreements, right? Some peace talks. They would be irrelevant because they were a sovereign state and we're a sovereign state. Okay,
Kerry was doing peace talks. Trump. I mean, when Trump was running, he seemed to suggest that he could be the person to negotiate a peace talk. So, and I know, the peace talks are still going on. But let's look at it this way. Historically, the western half is Jewish. So for that reason, I don't have any reason to doubt that democratically those people would have a right to have their capital there, and they'd have a right to be part of Israel if they want to be, because that's democracy. They could do that. But what about the people in the eastern half of the city?
I don't know. We can negotiate over.
They have those same rights because they don't practice that, and they're not that ethnicity. So would they have that same right?
First of all, they have the right because they have the right to claim Israel's citizenship. That's what Jerusalem. I mean, that's what Israeli government offered them. They can claim citizenship, and as I said, they receive the social security, just like the Arabs.
They don't really have citizenship though. They just have residency status, and if they leave for a year,
yes, but they can claim. They can claim citizenship. They don't do that because it's not. I mean, it doesn't. They won't. It's just not for their whole. It's just they won't do that. They do not accept the Zionism. By the way, Zion is Jerusalem. Just I'm saying, Zion. It's another name of Jerusalem in the Bible, which has been mentioned 700 times and not one time in the Quran. Yeah, but doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that whatever happens in the future must be negotiated. You can't force something on sovereign state just because of some violence of some other people around the world. You can't force that. We can negotiate over this, but you can't force this on sovereign state.
I think that's our chief disagreement is the idea of this being a capital and how it's a precondition to talks and how that negatively affects a peace solution.